to the Mouse Bytes podcast. Here we go.
Hello, and welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast, a show all about Disney video games, past and present. Welcome to the show. This is episode 2, and today I am joined by my good friend, Jeph Perez. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Good.
How are you? Did you introduce yourself?
Oh, I don't think I did. I am Clay, in case you don't know that, which you probably don't. Yes, and so we are Clay and Jeph, and we are the host of the Mouse Bytes podcast. And yeah, it's been another month, and so it's time to take a look at another Disney game. I don't know about you, Jeph, but this month went by super fast for me.
It went so fast.
And I kept saying, oh, I got plenty of time to play The Little Mermaid. And then all of a sudden, It was like, it was either early this week, I was like, oh crap, I need to put some more time into this game. And so, luckily, it is an NES game, so, not too much to have to cover. But, yes, anyways, so today we are covering The Little Mermaid for the NES. So to start off, we like to ask ourselves, what the heck is this game? Because there are multiple Little Mermaid games out there, so we figured right up front we'd let you guys know exactly which game this is we're talking about. If for some reason you're like trying to remember, I've played a game with the Little Mermaid in it, but which one is it? Jeph, would you like to tell the listeners at home what the heck this game is?
Sure. This is a 2D side-scrolling... not a platformer. It's an underwater platformer, if there's such a thing, where you play as the Little Mermaid, scrolling through levels, made by Capcom, so much in the vein of their NES games that are similar, like the Mickey ones or even Mega Man. It's a little adventure under the sea.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate.
Not much more to it than that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a simplistic concept. There are some interesting features that it has that might make it a little bit different or similar to other games, but yeah, at the core, that's pretty much what it is. It's your good old fashioned Capcom. It's got the purple, box and the purple label on the cartridge, which was kind of Capcom's thing back then. I've got a bunch of them all kind of stacked in my little collection in the basement. So I've got that one, I got Darkwing Duck, and then I've got, DuckTales and all those. So I love that about those. They have all the purple labels on them and stuff. So anyway, so now we're just kind of hit our initial thoughts, what we knew about the game going in, whether or not we played it before, or just kind of maybe some broad reactions to the game. Maybe not giving away your full thoughts on the game, but just kind of what we did know or any history we have with it. I can go first and basically say I think we owned this game when I was a kid, but I don't have a ton of memory of playing it back in the day. But the most recent interaction I had with it, I think it was last year. I was buying a bunch of games online, on Instagram actually. People sell stuff on there, and I saw Little Mermaid come up, and it was like super cheap. It was like less than $10 or something. I was like, oh, I don't own that, and it's a Disney game, and why not? So I went ahead and purchased it, and it came in the mail, and I was like, all right, I really have no idea. I couldn't remember if I'd played it, put it in, and I was like, I was pleasantly surprised. I assumed at the price that I got it for, it was probably not going to be very good, so I had very low expectations. I didn't play it for very long at that point. I just, put it in for a couple minutes and checked it out. I was like, all right, cool. I didn't completely waste my money. There's Disney games that I've bought that have given me way worse initial thoughts just looking at it for the first 10 seconds and being like, ooh, this isn't going to be good. But that was not the case with this one. So yeah, that was kind of my history with it. I honestly can't remember if we had this as kids or not, but yeah, so that was kind of my history. What about you, Jeph?
Mine is much less interesting than that. Basically, I didn't really even know that it was a thing. I hadn't really thought that there would have been a movie tie-in video game at that point, because this is from 1989, the movie. And actually, I don't know when the game came out. I would guess 90, maybe 91. But
I've got it right here. It came out in 91. Yes.
Okay. So I wasn't even aware this game existed until you mentioned it when we were thinking of possible future games. So I'm glad you suggested it. I didn't really have any expectations. I thought, yeah, it's going to be an 8-bit platformer. I didn't know it was Capcom until after I played it, and so it was a pleasant surprise. Like I went in not expecting much of anything and walked away pleasantly surprised, like I said. So yeah, that's kind of where I stood going into it.
Nice.
Not much before.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that I guess I just now realized this. I know we were talking about what the heck is this game. There also was a Game Boy port for this game that came out, let's see, a year or two later, depending on if you're in Europe or North America. It came out in 93. But it's basically it looks like a shot-for-shot remake or, port of it. It looks completely the same. The layout of the levels looks exactly the same. And all the enemy placements and stuff are exactly like the NES one. So we did not play that version. If I had done a little more research, I probably would have checked it out real quick just to get a feel for it. But it looks exactly the same, except for it's black and white, and music doesn't sound as good or whatever. But looks like it's all there. So interesting.
Nice.
Just thought I'd point that out. So
Cool.
All right. Well, next up is our game discussion, where we are going to talk about the look, the sound, gameplay, story, all of that. So let's go ahead and jump right into there. First up, we are going to talk about the visual look of this game. What does it look like? How does it look? How does it hold up to the source material? Do the characters look right? How do the backgrounds and the world seem to feel? What's the UI like? So let's start there. Jeph, what are your thoughts?
I would say for an 8-bit game, this game is very faithful to its source material. I like the sprites. The main sprite for Ariel is pretty big for an NES game and well animated, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Yeah, the backgrounds are exceptional, in my opinion. They kind of have this fading to dark sea look to them.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of some fake perspective that makes it look more realistic. Bright and colorful in some levels, a little darker in others, and I don't know that there's any true effects, but like lots of good animations. The enemy animations are pretty simplistic. They, kind of are like your typical NES drone that's not super animated, kind of just moves on screen with 2 frames, but the bosses are a little bit bigger, and those are great sprites in my opinion. Like the first boss is a shark, and he looks good. We'll talk a little more maybe about some of the other ones, but
Yeah.
I'm very much a fan of it. As far as the like menu UI or whatever, like the pause menu and UI, I actually don't even remember the UI during gameplay. Is there one?
There really isn't.
Yeah.
It's pretty much you have your hearts up on the top
yeah,
left.
the upper left, your health. Yep, that's
And
right.
that's really the only thing. And strange thing about the hearts is when you start off, you have 3 hearts, but then there's 2 empty hearts.
Yeah, out of
So you
a
could
5 meter.
Right,
Yeah.
you have a 5 meter, but they only give you 3, which is strange.
Yeah.
And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but for the longest time, I couldn't figure out how to get a heart. I was like, I don't. Did you ever figure that out?
I did eventually. I found one in sand in the volcano level by just kicking the sand, and then I found one by like throwing enemies or shells into like squares.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not obvious or intuitive whatsoever. It's
Right.
not like
and
enemies drop them when you kill them or anything like that.
Yeah. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I was like, really? They've made this quite difficult to
Yeah.
to get extra health. But
And 3 hits to start out with is not very generous because you'll take hits. Like,
well, and you just feel cheated too because you're like, well, I could have 5 hearts. Like, I don't know. Either
Yeah, I
just
agree.
don't put 5 on there or start a person out with full health. Like, that's how
Right.
every game is. You get full health. Come on.
Right. Totally
But-
agree. So yeah, what is your thoughts on the graphics? I
Yes.
guess we finished with the UI. I mean, there's a little pause screen that's got a few things, and it's a little more than your typical lackluster. Like, it's got a picture of Ariel and a little frame and
Right.
some power up boxes.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
Overall,
That's
your thoughts on the
Super
graphics?
simple.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think for an NES game, I'm not a pro when it comes to like comparing visuals on NES games. That's not really my area of expertise, but I would
Yeah.
totally agree. I think that they've created a level of depth. There's a lot of like multiple background things. Like, I'm looking
Yeah.
at there's a level here where you're in a ship and there's like broken holes in the ship and you can see things kind of in the foreground, the background, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I think they did a pretty good job trying to come up with different colors and things. There's certain parts of levels where you can kind of go above the water and everything's
Yeah.
kind of brownish gold, but then you go below the water and everything's greenish blue. And so I think they did a pretty good job trying to convey that you are underwater, and even though you don't really see a lot of bubbles or things, obviously you're underwater because you're swimming, obviously. It's also worth noting that Ariel has like 3 frames of animation for when she turns.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer.
Well-
It's beautifully animated, but it makes it hard for gameplay.
Yeah, because like with Mega Man, you have like 1 frame and you just turn around and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
here I am. So it makes it feel sluggish, I think.
Yep.
But it like you said, it is kind of neat that they put that much depth into
Exactly.
turning around. But yeah, so it's like a pro and a con at the same time. But it does show that they put some time into trying to make her movements look, fluid and realistic. And
Right.
there are some little touches that I appreciate, like when she goes onto land, you kind of have to hop. Obviously, you can't
Mhm.
just keep
Yeah.
swimming. So stuff like
like
that, I
that.
thought was a nice touch. The only thing that I noticed that I didn't really think was true to the original source material is the color of her hair.
Yeah, it's kind of pink.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of red on like the edges, but it's very pink, and
Yeah, that was interesting.
her hair is
So-
obviously not pink, but for whatever reason they decided to go that route. I don't know if it was a technical limitation or or what. I don't know.
I'm sure they could have done it. I'm guessing because red is it's one of the colors in an old CRT TV. It may have shown really bright and bloomed on
Right.
black backgrounds. So the pink may have muted it a little bit to keep it in check. And maybe if you think about it, if you're running a pink color on a CRT screen, did you play this on a CRT or did you play it on a big TV?
I
Like
played it on a
modern?
big TV.
So I'm thinking just like of the pixels on an old CRT. Pink is always going to have the red pixels activated, so it may have looked a little more red than it does on an HD TV.
Right.
And then I'm trying to think what colors would combine, but I'm sure it looked a lot better on a CRT. I would love to test that sometime.
Yeah.
But I was
Definitely.
curious as far as seeing it pixel perfect in HD. It definitely showed as being a little pink.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah. But other than that, I think each stage kind of gave a good variety of
Yeah. very distinct.
colors, changes. Yeah, I mean, it's a shorter game, but I think they did a good job trying to kind of, separate them and make them
Yeah.
seem different. So, other than that, yeah, overall, I there wasn't a whole lot visually that I wasn't a big fan of. I think the enemy character designs were good. They worked well. I think there
Yeah.
was good variety. I think Ariel's her little pixel art, her character looked good. Her hair was a bit large and it kind of confused me on
it was kinda
hitboxes.
big. Yeah.
And but other than that, like, she still felt like her tail and stuff didn't feel like it was super long or frustrating or anything like that. And then, spoiler alert, Ursula's in the end, I don't know, I thought she looked pretty cool too. So I thought they did a good job overall.
Yep. I agree.
So,
Yeah. So from there, do you want to hop into kind of the sound and music of the game.
Yeah, man. What were your thoughts there?
So it starts out when you first turn on the game. It's on the title screen with the Under the Sea theme, I believe, playing.
Yes.
In BitTune, which I thought was really awesome, and I was really excited and thinking, okay, they got the music license, which was hit or miss for some games. We talked about that last episode with Mickey Mania, that they didn't really have any well-known musical tracks, even like the Steamboat Willie theme, that would have been a no-brainer. But the level music is unique to each level, but it's well done. I thought it was fitting. It didn't get repetitive. I didn't find it annoying. The volcano level got really caught in my head.
Nice.
So I really like the music. The sound effects, I feel like, are pretty limited. There's not anything that really stands out to me. Kind of make little sounds, beeps and boops, when you put an enemy in a bubble and kick them away, and kind of it. Was there more than that?
No, I think you
For
pretty
sound
much hit
effects?
it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it's an NES game, so there's really only so much. One thing I forgot I wanted to mention in the look portion, which we already got out of. The cutscenes are.
Oh yeah.
They're very simplistic. The only thing I guess I didn't totally like, but I guess I understand because it's an NES game, was that when they talk, they just kind of go bop 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 bop, like their mouths just open close.
Yeah. But at least they did that versus not
Yeah.
moving like GoldenEye. I mean, you think about that.
Honestly, I think I would have just rather them just not moved and just had it be
stationary.
like a still image.
Yeah.
But they
Fair enough.
attempted to put in a, I don't know.
a little extra animation
Yeah.
that they didn't need to. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true. And I liked those pixel arts or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse
I
me.
agree.
Like they looked like the characters they were representing, because I've seen some licensed pixel art, or even like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like Toy Story on the SNES, or more so like on the Game Boy as an 8-bit system. Like the renders from the computer renders that we're familiar with to what they looked like weren't really spot on. I don't know if it's just the color palette couldn't support what it should look like or what, but these ones were really good pixel art that to me looked close enough, and the proportions were right, and getting the right black dot in the right space is really a fine art, in my opinion, on 8-bit pixel art. So I think they did a great job with those.
Definitely. So sorry, I pulled us out of the music area, but
Yeah. Your thoughts on the music being original and all that?
yeah, I mean, I wish they had tried to add some more stuff from the source material,
Agreed.
from the movie. But the stuff they did add, I thought worked well. And yeah, pretty much every NES game uses the same kind of chiptune stuff, right? There wasn't really a lot of variation where, unlike the following generations or whatever. But for what it was, yeah, I thought it was catchy. It never annoyed me. I know a lot of people kind of get annoyed with NES music after a while, but for me,
Right.
I never turned down the volume or was like, ugh, I can't stand this. So
Same.
yeah. So I would say it worked pretty well. I thought it worked well for the game. It kind of had that Little Mermaid feel to it, underwater, bright and happy, blah blah blah. So yeah, I didn't have any issues with it. So I'd say A-, maybe, give or take.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'd put it B or an A-. Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, the next up is the gameplay. So just a couple things I'll hit on before we get into like the difficulty of it, is just kind of explaining, I guess, what you do in this game. And so obviously you're swimming around. One nice thing about this, unlike the Mario swim levels, is Ariel remains stationary when you're not moving.
Yes.
So she just kind of sits there, which I think you agree with me was such a smart choice.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yep. Because I know a lot of people don't like that about the Mario ones. So you basically can fly. It looks like you're flying around, the level, and you can go up, you can go down. The levels, obviously, they channel you into certain areas. Sometimes you're going left or right. Sometimes you're going up or down. So kind of got a Mega Man feel there. you can't. What else? Hold on. So then basically your two buttons, your A and B's, you have the option to swim fast, and you have the option to, I don't even know what the official term is for this.
Flip your tail to create some bubbles.
Yes, there it is. And so that's your attack. Excuse me. And so you do that, and you are able to trap enemy fishes in other sea life into bubbles. And you start off and you have a very low powered bubble flipper thing, and as you go along you have the ability to collect upgrades to upgrade those things, which is something that you can check in the pause menu. So there is a little bit of depth to this. They allow for some upgrades, and the way they go about it, though, I think is kind of
a little flawed design.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that, maybe?
Sure. Yeah. So throughout each level, there's these chests, and you can open them with some shell items that appear in the level. There's always usually a shell item near a chest, and part of it is just learning the level. Like some chests don't have anything, and you get 2 chests and 1 shell. So like you kind of have to use it wisely because it'll disappear. But so there's red pearls and green pearls, and essentially the red pearls upgrade your power of your bubble. So when you first start, you just have little bubbles that are visually shown as little bubbles. It takes like 2 or 3 hits on an enemy to encapsulate them into a bubble, at which point you can grab them, swim around with them, and then like throw them or kick them at other enemies or objects. And then the green pearls upgrade your, I think it's range, and so I guess the distance your bubbles will travel.
Right.
So like you mentioned, there's 3 stages per upgrade for each. So like single hit bubble, it's a little bit bigger bubble, and then like this super bubble, and then the range, I guess, just extends.
Did you ever get to the? Sorry, did you ever get to the final power bubble?
I used a cheat to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
no, that's fine. I was just curious.
Yeah,
it's like
the super red wavy.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. I was like, whoa.
It's kind of weird. Yeah, it's like blood bubbles. And they're like they're like pill shaped. Anyway.
Yeah.
Lost my train of thought. Where was I
Sorry.
going with that? No, you're good. You're good.
So what?
The design flaw.
Yes.
Basically, you get these or whatever, but whenever you die after 3 hits, because your 3 hearts aren't full, you lose all of your pearls, and you can't just go regain them in the level. They're gone. So like, you can't die in this game, and that's a huge design flaw as far as the power, because it's like some things you can't do it without the power upgrade. Like you can, but it's just hard, and you're going to get hit because you have to sit in one spot whirling your tail like 3 or 4 times where you normally would have done 1 with the upgraded power.
Right.
So a little unfortunate with the design choices there to not keep those after you die throughout the course of a level, we'll say.
Yeah.
But if you're good enough to learn the level, and if you die enough times, you will get the hang of it, and you can do it without dying. But it's just it was a pain, and maybe that was for longevity to force you to play more. But
right. Yeah.
I don't know otherwise.
So yeah, that is a big flaw to me. In fact, the second level was where it kind of finally became realization to me that it was not good. Because up to that point, I was still just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. But because in the second level, you get to a certain point, and there's these pink barrels that you can only hit and move if you have a certain amount of power.
Right.
And originally I did have the power, and I was like, oh cool, I can move these barrels, there's an extra life, like,
Same
this
thing
is neat.
happened to me.
And then I died, and I came back through, and I was like, oh, I'll just move these barrels and we'll be good.
Yep.
But then I realized, oh, I can't, because I don't have that power anymore, and I can't go back. So then you have to go through all these different areas where there's barrels and other things that you could usually, interact with, and you can't. And so I don't know, if it were me, the way I would have done this is every new level you start over, you have no upgrades.
Right.
And if you die, you keep them, depending where they start you out at.
Totally agree.
If you start at the beginning of the level, then you should start with nothing again. But just level the playing field every time and not punish someone so badly for dying. It was a little bit of a flaw.
Stemming from that, when you die, you restart at the beginning of the level unless you're in a boss battle, and then you just start in the room outside the boss. So I thought that was a little... The levels aren't super long, but like if you're pretty close to the end and you die, to go all the way back to the beginning is a pain, especially with lacking the power upgrades for, like you said, some of like moving the rocks or the barrels, and just there's a few little qualms with that. But
yeah, at least they let us start off at the boss, though. I do appreciate that.
That I did too. Least. Yeah.
The only other big gameplay flaw that I didn't like about this, I don't know what your thoughts are, is a lot of enemies will come at you from above or below you, and
you indefensible.
Yeah, and they're usually faster than you, and the amount of time it takes you to get out of the way, by then you're probably going to get hit. And so that's a little frustrating. I think I don't know how hard it would have been, but I feel like there should have been an up attack and a down attack to get things that are coming above and below you, especially in a game where you're swimming and things aren't just coming from left and right, but there are things, and they get way more aggressive towards the end, and fish are coming at you, and they have these like shrimp that are super fast,
like diagonal attack patterns.
Man. And so it's challenging. I get that, but it was a little frustrating.
One good thing is, like I said, when you encapsulate an enemy in a bubble, you can throw it at other enemies to kill them, and you can shoot those straight up, and you can't even shoot them diagonal. So, like, at least you have that, but you don't always have a fish on you, and like you're saying, like, if they're coming at you diagonal and you don't have one, you're screwed. Like, you can try and dodge as quickly as you can or learn the pattern, and you'll take a hit and lose a heart, and it's just, it's a little bit of a flaw.
Yeah. Trying to think. So what's the format of this game? I mean, maybe tell the listeners how many levels are in this, and what does a normal level look like, and I don't know. You know what I mean?
The basic gameplay loop I would say is you've got a like kind of a 2D level like we were talking about. You swim through, you open some chests, kind of not really solve puzzle, but just kind of go through, look for stuff, and then you essentially reach a boss at the end of each level, and there's 5 of those levels, a boss at the end of each one. The boss usually, I think each one is like a slightly different mechanic, which is cool. You know, it's not just the exact same thing, like say Bowser and the end of every Mario Brothers level. Each boss is its own unique thing. Like the first one is Flotsam and Jetsam, or is that the second one?
That's the second one. Shark's first one.
Sure. Yeah. So the first one, you got a shark swimming across the screen, and then he calls in his little fish buddies. You bubble them and then hit the shark. He stays in like a stationary location once he's come on screen, so he's not too bad to deal with. Flotsam and Jetsam are in like a shipwreck, and they kind of poke out of holes in it.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. So like it's kind of like whack-a-mole with the eels, and you're using their little fish buddies or their fish buddies against them. Then is it the third one, the ice one?
I wrote them.
Yeah. I think the third one's the ice one, and so it's an ice level, and then there's like this. Is it I think it's a walrus or something.
Yes, it's a walrus above ground.
Shoots frozen enemies at you that you have to thaw and then bubble and then shoot back up out of the water at him. So another new mechanic.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for getting the level list.
No problem.
The undersea volcano boss was I don't even know what he was. He was like a conductor fish or something.
Yeah.
He had like cannons shooting fish at you, so then you'd have to catch their trajectory, avoid one of them, or you'd shoot spinies every once in a while, or urchins.
Yeah.
And then Ursula's castle is a bit of a maze, and then you fight Ursula, and then you really fight Ursula. So
right.
Yeah.
As far as the bosses go, I did think that, and maybe it was just me getting better at the game playing through it, but I felt like some were easier than others. Like,
yeah, I think so. I mean, they were so different that happened.
Like, I struggled with the shark and Flotsam and Jetsam, but then the walrus and the cannon shooting thing, those I like flew through those two. But the first two I don't know. But maybe I was just sucking up at the beginning and got better. But
I'm sure it's probably a bit of that. I'm sure if you'd fought those other ones first and not quite had the hang of everything, because the levels are relatively short. It's just, the screen scrolls. I don't know if I never played Mega Man, but it's like you'll be in a certain scrolling area, and then you'll hit a solid wall, and then the game will kind of scroll again. Kind of like Metroid is what I can compare it to personally. and then you kind of go through and it'll side scroll like a Mario game, but then you reach another solid wall, pass through the opening, and then it will scroll again to a new area. It's like loading zones. But those are pretty short. It's just, 3 or 4 of those and then you're there. Maybe a little more than that, but they're short. And then you fight the boss. So I think with the first 2, it's pretty easy to get through without doing much with the gameplay and understanding it, and without the tougher enemy patterns. And so those bosses are a little more difficult because of the first thing that really tests you.
Right.
Whereas by the time you get to like the 4th boss or 3rd boss, like you've pretty much got the hang of the mechanics.
Right. I will say, as far as Ursula goes, I was really struggling with her until I realized that you could throw fish at her above. You didn't have to be on her level.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I kept having to go up there next to her and then throw it from the side of her.
Yeah.
And I guess I just never realized you could throw, because I assumed if you can't attack upward or downward,
right,
why would you be able to?
Bubbles up. Yeah.
Right. But you can. And so once I figured that out, Ursula was at least the first part. Yeah, she was pretty easy.
At that part. Yeah.
The second part too, I actually didn't struggle as much. I think I maybe died 2 or 3 times, and then I beat her. So,
nice.
Not a terrible boss if you understand all the mechanics and whatnot. So, difficulty-wise, what do you think? Like, how hard is this game overall? I mean, because you have to think back. This was, back in the 80s. Where there wasn't a lot of games, so you do want to have something that is going to challenge you, but maybe not like stupid impossible, our blockbuster brutal, as we call it.
Right. It's definitely not a blockbuster brutal.
Yes, I agree.
I think the brevity, the shortness, that it's 5 levels, and the levels themselves are pretty short. Combined with the gameplay, I'd put it just like right middle of the road. It's not super easy. There is a learning curve, and like you said, some of the AI is a little tricky, and you have to learn some patterns. So it's like it's hard in the sense that you kind of have to just play over and over, and you only have so many lives, so you get a game over and start all over and have to go through it again. But it's not like it's hard. And then the gameplay, there's just some quirks with like the turning animation doesn't let you throw or defend yourself. You can't attack while turning. Your little bubble. You can't press the input before the animation finishes and have her perform the action after the animation finishes. You have to wait for the animation to finish to then do the input, and that's a bit of a flaw in my opinion too. Because that would have saved my a couple times. I probably
definitely.
Yeah,
and so no, I totally agree, dude. I think difficulty wise, I think if you played this game more and more, and you just kept beating it, I think over time you would get a lot better at it. I think playing through it for the first couple times, it was frustrating for me. But if this was a game that I didn't have, I didn't have a lot else to play, I think that I would get better at it. So I think there's a learning curve to it, but I think the more you play it, the more you understand how to get hearts and other things. I think the difficulty would go down more, and you could be a lot better at it. Will I play this game a lot more? Probably not, but it's still good to know that I played through the whole thing and beat the game or whatever. So
yep. I think I would have enjoyed it as a kid and played it a lot, but I wouldn't play it now again. But yeah, it's for an 8-bit game of its era. I think it was pretty good. I think it was just about right for what, especially a younger kid would need, versus like a more hardcore gamer.
Right.
Your Contra players, etc.
Definitely. And I mean, it does have a little bit of a girly aesthetic to it. I mean,
yeah,
we're two grown men.
Yep.
Yeah, we're 2 grown men playing a game with a pink-haired mermaid girl. So, but zero shame,
Exactly. We own it. All right. Speaking of this little pink-haired girl, there's a little bit of a story with this game. Do you want to kind of tell the listeners a little bit about that, or just read it for them? Because it's seriously bad.
I would say this is one of the weaker parts of the game. I think the art that goes with the story is pretty cool, minus the moving mouths, but the writing itself for it is a little weak, and I'll let you be the judge of it. I'm going to read just the intro opening story cinematic, which it's cool that the game actually has an opening story. They could just
Yeah.
throw you right in like, oh, it's a Little Mermaid. Here we go. Boom. So they did try to set up some premise. I don't even know where this fits. I'm assuming this is after the movie ends.
They pretty much established that it is, but then that doesn't make sense why Ursula's still alive. But
right.
Because I think they said it's been a couple of years, and Ariel wanted to see her friends or something like that. Like they implied that it's after they're married, but
Right.
like it's just Ursula's suddenly alive again.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to read this. I'm reading it as the game presents it. So if I read slower, it's because the game is slow. But I kind of get a kick out of reading it. So Ariel, princess of the sea, fell in love with Eric at first sight. Oh, man. It's scrolling fast. Sorry. Ariel, princess of the sea, fell in love with Eric at first sight. She asked Ursula to make her human so she could meet him. He fell in love with her too and planned to marry her. Then one day, Sebastian, Flounder, and Scuttle came to see Ariel in a big hurry.
Okay, so this is before the wedding.
They explained that Ursula had cast a spell over the fish of the sea, so they had to do what she wanted. If she wasn't stopped, she would probably take over the whole sea. Ariel decided to go to Ursula's castle to try to release the fish from Ursula's spell. She explained to Eric that she was a mermaid and a princess of the sea, and she had to try to save her friends. Eric tried to convince her not to go, but she turned back into a mermaid, dove into the sea, and began to swim towards Ursula's castle. Stage 1, Sea of Coral. All right.
I love that she can magically control her ability to
Yes.
turn into a mermaid suddenly.
She's somehow embraced, I can just do this on a whim whenever I want. So
Right.
it's
So
funny.
the decision at the end of the movie where she wanted to stay human, her dad and all that, that's all irrelevant now.
Right. And then at the end of the game, there's a closing cinematic. Let me read that one. I got it right here. Ariel defeated Ursula and released her friends from the spell, but there was no way. Next. Come on. There was no way. What? For her to become human again. Ariel spent every day looking up at the land with tears in her eyes. King Triton saw this. His daughter. King Triton saw that his daughter was in love and cast a spell on her to make her human once again. Ariel returned to the land and went to see Eric. He was very happy when he saw her, and he swept her into his arms.
Ooh.
They got married and lived happily ever after. And then it says the end, and it literally just sticks to. There's a shot of them after they got married, and it just says the end, and it plays Under the Sea on loop, and it never stops. It doesn't go back to the title screen. It just sits there.
God, I hate games that do that.
After like 10 minutes, I was like, all right, I guess that's it. And I can reset the game now. But man, so she can turn herself into a mermaid again, but then she can't. So she's sad. And she's
bit
just
of a plot hole there.
Yeah, the whole thing makes no sense in comparison to the movie itself. But I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
Probably the biggest flaw as far as outside of like the difficulty and the controls. But whatever, it's NES. It was probably Capcom. They're a Japanese studio,
They are.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this could just be some terrible, what's the word? Them translating it.
Yeah, I don't know if they wrote it in English or Japanese or what. Yeah, it seems like either A, programmer writing, or B, like preschool level books.
Right.
Like there are books that sound like this, but they're like the super, my first Disney book. So I can't tell. And again, it's like the game plays a little bit harder than what you'd expect for 5-year-olds and below, but it's a mixed bag, and it's very similar to other games of its era, though.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's a little rough, but it's to be expected. I think it's a little bit more, excusable. Like you can kind of overlook it. Like it's an NES platformer type game. We're not really like looking for huge storyline here.
Right.
And it was interesting. In between each level, they would have little cutscenes as well, kind of moving you. Oh, she's now at the volcano. Like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So they tried to make the story kind of integrated into the gameplay, but it's just unfortunate that it wasn't written very well and didn't really make a whole lot of sense with the others, the other canon or whatever. But overall, not a big deal. So yeah, let's go ahead and close up with our final thoughts. All right, Jeph, why don't you give the listeners your final thoughts on this game?
Alrighty, so this is a fun and very graphically beautiful NES game, in my opinion. The difficulties a little bit of a mixed bag, but overall isn't terribly hard, and especially if you're, an adult gamer, you should have no problem ultimately getting the hang of it. Story's a little weak. Sound is good. Not any of the original music reinterpreted, which is unfortunate, but not a deal breaker for me. Control and animation is good, and it's a little bit on the short side, but other than that, I would recommend it to people. If you have a chance to play it, I would say play it. Definitely.
Cool.
How about you?
For me, I like this game. Like I said, when I first put it in, I was like pleasantly surprised with what I was getting. Obviously, it's Capcom, so you're going to get quality to a certain level. There are some things about it that we've mentioned that I don't necessarily super like about it. Makes it a little more frustrating and difficult, but once you get going into it, it's a good challenge. I think to beat the game, it has a decent amount of challenge to it. So if you like Mega Mans and DuckTales and Darkwing Ducks of the NES, I think this is a good one to look for. It's cheap. You can buy it for really a fair price, I would say. It's kind of a different take on those, but it still feels kind of familiar with those. I haven't played a ton of other Little Mermaid games. I played for a few minutes the Genesis game, which is called Ariel, the Little Mermaid, and I think this game is way better than that one. I'm not a pro on that one, but just swimming around and the way they did it, it's just a little bit more frustrating. And so I think this is a better one. I don't know if there are others outside of those, but yeah, it's a cool little NES game. Good challenge, and visually great to look at. Music's pretty good. Story sucks, but who cares? Yeah. So if you're a grown man who's confident in himself and isn't embarrassed by playing games about the Little Mermaid, you should check it out. So
there you have it.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Actually, this month, and we'll be back next month, taking a look at another great Disney game. Hopefully, great Disney game.
Still deciding. But,
we'll figure that out, and it'll be good. Until then, you can get a hold of us on Twitter. We are on there, and our Twitter handle is mouse_bytes. Does that sound right, Jeph?
I do believe that's what it is, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So if you have any thoughts or questions or game suggestions, hit us up on Twitter. We would love to talk with you. We're still kind of figuring out where we belong in the Twitter sphere for this show. So we need all the friends we can get. So if you're listening and you've made it this far, we should be friends. Until then, we'll be back next time with more Mouse Bytes. Thank you for listening, and have a great month. Babe, can you just wait like 1 minute?
Yeah. Or did you?
Jeph, you're not Babe.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.